Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Night's program where we talk to reporters and writers and journalists and editors and give you a little background as to what they're thinking about when they're writing and maybe some further explanation of some of the work that they've done. In our second segment today, boy, are you going to be happy because we're going to go into the in a way the archive, but into the history of jazz in the Bronx. And that's going to be real exciting. But right now, let's say hello once again to the senior housing reporter at City Limits. It is Emma Whitford. Nice to see you once again, Emma.
Nice to see you as well.
Let's just get right into it. And I told you beforehand, what is going on with migrants in New York City? We have 100,000 migrants. We have a shelter system for homeless people that's overburdened. And this story you wrote really raised my eyebrows. The state said, and here's the headline, it grants reduced shelter standards for adult migrants when necessary. And so that means that clean mattresses, sheets and pillows, towels, soap, toilet paper, among the requirements that they've agreed to waive. Tell us about this, and then we'll try to make some sense of it.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I will say when I was reporting this one out, it was a bit eye-popping to me as well. But yeah, as you had mentioned, since last spring, so spring of 2022, we've had more than 100,000 immigrants come to New York City. This is a large volume of people to be coming from New York from other countries. When you look at the record historically, lots of different reasons for this that we certainly don't have a full episode to dedicate to right now. But this goes back to early last year. Not only folks coming from the U.S.-Mexico border, but also likely from other U.S. cities coming to New York, maybe to meet up with friends or family and really try to build a life in this country. So the story that I drilled down on, there has been a lot of back and forth in recent weeks and months between three entities. We have the New York City government, the state government, and the federal government. And advocates agree that every governmental entity has an important role to play in making sure that everyone in New York City has a roof over their head.
Of course.
When New York has a very unique set of court precedents that establish a right to shelter, which started out as just saying every person in New York City who needs a bed is going to have access to one, at least temporarily. But since then, there have been a lot of regulations that have built up, some of which are enforced by the state about not just having access to a shelter, but having access to a safe and clean and relatively hospitable shelter. So this story I wrote
with toilet paper.
Well, yes, exactly. So the Eric Adams administration, the mayor of New York, sent a letter to the state with a list of requests about various ways it can deal with this like large influx of people all at once. So basically our standard existing shelter system is not big enough. So that's why we've seen some other city agencies step in. You've seen some larger tent facilities with cots.
So let me just ask you about this, the phrase that's in there, that's in your writing, that apparently is in the structure of it, where no alternative is available. That is so vague. So you say, okay, I forgot where the latest place is that they're talking about, putting a tent with
Floyd Bennett Field,
yeah. So at Floyd Bennett Field, is somebody going to say, gee, we just didn't know where we're going to get clean mattresses or buy toilet paper? I mean, and then the city says, well, it's not our problem. And then you have people who you're trying to do your best for living in that sort of condition, or it's telling them, go get a job, buy yourself some toilet paper. I mean, I'm just not following the logic behind it. I'm trying.
I know.
Your reporting is great, but I'm like trying to figure it out. If we're going to do it, for goodness gracious, sheets and pillows.
So it's interesting you mentioned
buy a box of them,
Yeah. Well, Floyd Bennett Field, that is actually, if that opens, it wouldn't actually be run by the Department of Homeless Services. So a lot of the standards that we talk about, especially when it comes to spacing between beds, storage lockers for people's possessions, all those are expectations for people who are in Department of Homeless Services shelters. The interesting thing that I didn't know before I started reporting a lot on homelessness in New York is the Department of Homeless Services is just one part of our overall shelter system these days. So the waivers that the city was seeking were for when they have to set up additional space within that system. Already, there are a number of migrants staying in shelters run by other agencies where you have cots that are head to toe, these kinds of standards that are already somewhat reduced from what the Department of Homeless Services must maintain. So,
well, excuse me, that's very interesting, and I
yeah,
really appreciate your mentioning that. So, yes, there are other agencies that are working with migrants, and so some of these rules don't apply to them. Although I would wonder, just from knowing some of the people who run these things, if they would even consider not doing that sort of thing for the
right.
people, unless it's a church that just doesn't have the facility. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying.
There's a lot of complexity here, and I think to give the city to give an acknowledgement of how they responded to the story, what they're talking about. They say, we have our hands full. We're trying to accommodate as quickly as we can. In the spirit of avoiding having people sleeping on the street, we need like a little bit less regulation for when we're setting up areas or adding extra beds to areas. Now, obviously, the concerns that advocates raise about this are entirely legitimate, very concerning. It's probably not a bureaucrat who's somewhere saying, we're just not going to give toilet paper to this place, like go into it with that approach. But it definitely seems to be seeking some regulatory relaxation, which they seem to be saying is, look, we need to act quickly. We can't cross all our T's and dot all of our I's in the same way as we would under normal circumstances. Obviously, the response to that is these standards exist for a reason. They are fundamental
Well,
to
yes, that's the thing. And listen, it costs whatever it's going to cost at Floyd Bennett Field, or originally at Orchard Beach, or wherever they were talking about putting a big tent. That whole process is going to cost a lot. Seems to me, if you're going to do it again, this is Gary, then you spend a little extra and you get toilet paper and pillows and sheets, and at least try to make it decent, because they're here and you want them to do better. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
in other words, we want them to be able to, but if you hold them back with those kinds of issues, wow, their process, and of course all of our process is more difficult.
Yeah. So my goal at City Limits is to keep a really close eye on how this plays out in practice. One
Yes.
interesting thing is the state has required, if the city goes and picks a specific area and they want to relax some standards, they're going to have to, within 2 days, contact the state, say, this is the location, these are the waivers that we have issued. And then the state would then have recourse to, I think, shorten the waiver period, et cetera.
Right.
So we're definitely going to be watching closely on how this plays.
We interviewed Congressman Richie Torres on on the other program that I host called Bronx Talk, and I asked him about this and what does the federal, because we've been talking about the city and the state, what the federal government, and his contention was the federal government has got to push forward and get work permits for these people as soon as possible, so that even if they are in a place which doesn't have sheets and pillowcases and toilet paper, they have a chance to find a job or get work. But if they can't do that, then you know what I mean? That's the part the Fed needs to play, and that's a congressional thing. Although he mentioned that he thought the president could do that by presidential order. That's out of my realm, but that's the kind of thing that would move them forward.
Yeah, and I think our mayor and our governor are very much in agreement on that point, saying that's one thing that the federal government.
And in fact, Congressman Torres was very clear to say, and credit him for being open about it, saying that the federal government at the moment has failed in this process. Let's just move to another issue, which is related, and you wrote about it. The city seeks state approval to issue 60-day shelter limit to asylum seekers. So that means if they don't have another place to go in 2 months, we're then putting them on the streets, and then all of a sudden they're moving into a homeless shelter. I mean, I'm trying to work with you here. I'm working on it.
No, it's a lot of confusing things to keep straight. So earlier this summer, Mayor Adams made an announcement, and his contention has been the system as a whole is overwhelmed. And in the midst of this, he has sought to prioritize longer shelter stays for families with children. So the policy he put into effect is starting with single adults who have immigrated to New York over the last year and a half are in this category. Once you have, you could receive a notice and say 60 days from now, our goal, you will lose your shelter placement. And if at that point you don't have an alternative place to live, then you're going to have to go back and reapply for a placement. So that was an immediate red flag for advocates. What the city has said is the goal is to help people along their way. There is some, you had mentioned 100,000 immigrants have come in the last year.
I use the word migrants. I mean, immigrants would be a different category, no?
Well, I think advocates feel differently about different terms, but
okay.
I get, yeah. So, but yeah.
You're the housing expert, so I'll concede to you.
But so the idea was people just might need a couple, there are concrete ways that we can be helping people move on to the next place. Maybe we haven't been meeting with them as much as we could to help them on their way. So the way the city is justifying this is saying we are going to accompany these 60-day limits with intensified casework to help people find something new. So this policy has been ongoing.
Excuse me, that is to say that we're going to add something on the front end to make sure that they're better off after 60 days. That I like, but to just say, well, you're not. I mean, that becomes a difficult thing.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to the other story. There's a lot of everything is going to require a lot of close looks and keeping up with what these things mean in practice. I think plenty of members of the city council would say, yes, they agree more intensified casework is helpful, but some of them haven't seen like a lot to make them confident that just because this new policy is in effect, everyone's going to get the help they need to get housed somewhere stable.
That's rather optimistic, to say the least. Listen, we're about out of time. We could keep talking. I know that there was another issue about the shelter intake process. We'll save that for the next time you're with us. Emma Whitford, who's the senior housing reporter for City Limits. What would we do without you? I don't know, because having these dialogues and at least understanding what's going on is so important, because these are real human beings involved, and that's
absolutely
important.
Yes.
You're great. Say hello to Jean Marie and all our friends there. Thank you.
I will.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, yes, music, Bronx music, jazz. Stick around.
Hey, boss. Okay.
I said I'm fine.
With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it, and we lost it.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
Man, it's lonely. Like, going through life lonely.
There is the therapeutic aspect of music, just expressing how you feel. I'm going to talk to Howie about his feelings, make it into a song.
STEM is everywhere, like here. Behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that can be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker hordes.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
All right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I am thrilled, and I mentioned it to the guests just a moment ago. My favorite subject in the world is Bronx music, and we are really right in the center of Bronx music this evening. Let's say hello to my good buddy, longtime friend of the Bronx. I call him Maestro because he is a maestro. Bobby Sanabria, nice to have you with us as always.
Thank you, Gary, and hello to
my fellow Bronxites out there viewing.
There you go. And this is really a special moment. Bertha Hope of the Bertha Hope Quintet is with us, and Monica Mo, if I pronounced that right, Monica Mo Hope is with us. We're here to talk about Sunday, September 10th at the Bronx Music Heritage Center Plaza, 438 East 163rd Street. Something very special is going to happen, and that is a tribute to the late, great Elmo Hope. Before we let Bertha and Monica in, Bobby Sanabria, why is this just so important to do? Who, for people who don't know, who was Elmo Hope, and why was he such a significant figure in jazz and the Bronx and everything else?
Well, although Maestro Hope is a forgotten figure by many in the canon of pianists that are revered in terms of modern contemporary jazz, what became known as bebop, which was this virtuosic form of jazz that challenged the musicians with new harmonies, jagged rhythms, etc., new incredibly fast tempos at times. Well, one of the masters of this was the great pianist Elmo Hope, a contemporary of Bud Powell and many of the other great pianists of the time period, onward and up through Oscar Peterson. And he's long been forgotten, but this is his centennial that we're celebrating. And he has a connection to the Bronx because he lived in the Bronx. He was, he has a connection also to the Caribbean because his father was from Barbados and his mother was from Antigua in the Caribbean. So, and of course, the Bronx exudes the Caribbean in many, many ways with all of the different islands represented. So Elmo, in terms of his music, besides being a prolific pianist, he was a prolific composer as well. And, we'll be honoring him with my Cuarteto H opening up the festivities by performing some adaptations of some of his music in a Latin jazz context, adapting him to Afro-Cuban, Brazilian rhythms, etc. And it's very easy because of Elmo's Afro-Caribbean roots. Well, the music that he produced has the rhythms baked in already, and they're very easily adaptable. And
listen,
we'll be opening up for the incredible Bertha Hope, who is a master. You call me master. She is a maestra in terms of the jazz idiom.
I have to just interject. I love how you say easy. Yeah, it's easy for some. It's not really easy for others. And I understand how you, Bobby Sanabria, would say, well, this is easy. But really, it's brilliant work. And we're thrilled that, Bobby and his group will be out there. Bertha, just talk about, your roots are significant. Talk about, just you getting started. Did you learn from Elmo? Were you both playing music at the same time? I mean, how did you? We know that he passed in 1967 suddenly, and at the age of 43. Very sad. But were you doing music before that? Yeah, just give us a little bit of your own background.
Yes, I was playing with the Johnny Otis band in Los Angeles when I was 15.
Wow.
Johnny Otis got special permission to let me play as long as I was kept away from the bar, and there would be no alcohol or any funny stuff going on. So
that's what they told everybody, but okay.
Well, he did a pretty good job of protecting me, and as the little
but that's how you got involved in music, and that's when you started.
No, I was involved in music practically all my life because my father was a singer who did bel canto and German lieder and American Negro spirituals. So the house was filled with all kinds of music from as long as I can remember.
And why is it important for you to have this? This is going to be a great afternoon. It's Sunday the 10th at 3 p.m. At the Bronx Music Hall Plaza. Why is this important to you?
Well, out of all the concerts that we're doing, this is the only one that's going to be in the Bronx, in the neighborhood where Elmo spent his teenage years, along with Thelonious Monk and Bud Powell. And also, Mayor de Blasio designated September 10th as Elmo Hope Day.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty special. Monica, Monica, I just want to make sure we get everybody in here. Monica, for you, much like Mom, you had music in your ears the the minute you were born. I mean, let's just talk about your own roots.
Well, actually, before Mom says that while I was not yet born, she was playing, and I was playing music. But what my mother was getting ready to say, which she didn't get a chance to finish, is September 10th, 2016 was designated as Elmo Hope Day by former Mayor Bill de Blasio. So that is why we wanted to do a concert on September 10th, this year in his centennial year in connection with that proclamation that was put forth by the mayor. So my early musical roots were more singing than instrumentation. I started singing gospel when I was 10 years old, and I traveled with a choir for 7 years. From the age of 10 to 17, traveled with a choir in all the 5-state area. And the choir grew from 15 people. I was one of the founding members up until about 150 people. And then over the years, grew into jazz myself. So I do perform jazz, not as frequently as my mom, but yes.
So this is generations of hope, if you will. I want to show a clip just so people will know a little bit about who you are and what you sound like. So this is Bertha and Monica doing a duet. So let's just let it rip, and folks, strap yourself in. It's just too beautiful to be believed. Take a look.
No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. For I have learned that all you give is all you get. So give it all that you got. I've had my share. I drank my fill, and even though I'm satisfied, I hunger still to see what's down another road beyond the hill, and to do it all again.
My goodness, there we go. So Bobby, this is important. I mean, it goes without saying, this is important to the Bronx Music Heritage Center. This is literally what the Bronx Music Heritage Center is about, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. We're celebrating all of the great artists and all of the great different forms of music that come from our beloved borough. I like to call the Bronx the borough of music. Of course, it's people call it El Condado de la Salsa, the borough of salsa, and of course it's the birthplace of hip-hop. But jazz is a big part of the history of the Bronx, in particular the South Bronx, with many jazz clubs that used to exist and a plethora of musicians that used to live in the South Bronx, including Elmo and also the great Thelonious Monk. And along with Bud Powell, you could call those three the Holy Trinity of modern jazz
in the Bronx. Bertha, you and Monica was telling me beforehand that you're going to be performing all over the place. You never stop. This is literally in your blood. You put this quintet together. Just talk to me about what we're going to see on Sunday the 10th from you. We know that Bobby's going to do his thing with his folks, but what are you going to do? And you and Monica.
Well, I'm going to be participating as a member of the quintet in my role as pianist and musical director. We're going to play some very challenging and not too frequently heard compositions of Elmo's that we've been playing for about a year now. And hopefully we are going to be continuing all over at least the tri-state area until June of 2024.
So it's almost like a year and a half here, or a year's tour. This is really a terrible question to ask. With all of that music that he left us with, he left you with, and you knew it intimately. How do you choose what you want to play? I mean, you must love all of it, you know. And here you are. So I don't know how long the performance is going to be, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. But there's a life, you know, a lifetime of music. How do you choose? Is it always your favorites? Do you say, hey, I'm going to pick something a little different this time? How do you figure it out?
No, I try to pick a variety of the music. He had two very specific writing periods, and they're very noticeable in the styles in which he wrote. Some closer to the 40s and others closer to the 50s. I like to pick music that's going to challenge my musicians. So it's not always, I mean, there's so many that are my favorites. But I like to challenge the musicians, and we also look together at all of the music that I have to work with to see how we can expand the band's repertoire slowly as we stay together.
I love how you say slowly. Of course, it's many years, but last thing we're gonna have to run. Does Monica, Bertha? Does Monica wake up singing? Does she wake up singing first thing in the morning?
Yeah, that's me. I do wake up singing, but not always in the morning. But you know, Mom's kind of like didn't tell you that she's actually been performing Elmo's music for many, many years.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Listen, so I'm just going to repeat. We'll put the flyer up Sunday the 10th at the Bronx Music Hall Plaza, which is at 438 East 163rd Street at 3 p.m. Everybody come out, chill out, enjoy the sound of the Bronx, the South Bronx.
The concert is free,
and free.
We hope to see you there.
Great. Yeah. Listen, this really is, as I said, I deal with 100 different subjects. Bronx music is my favorite subject. Bobby Sanabria, thank you so much for everything. And so nice to have met Bertha Hope and Monica Mo Hope on the segment this evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
And happy birthday, 100 years.
100 years
to Elmo Hope.
Beautiful. All right, that will do it for us. We thank Emma Whitford from City Limits, who was in our first segment. We thank these three incredible musicians, and we invite you to get out there. Let's enjoy Bronx music. And you know what I always say: if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, I'll be back next week. Good night.